I got into the tree business by accident, actually. I was in Topeka, Kansas, working for a guy by the name of Daryl Oakleaf. Great name for a tree service, I know. I went to work for Daryl, and Daryl and I worked together for the summer. And by the time the summer was up, it was just Daryl and I. One hot summer day, I had a roommate come to work with us, and Daryl was on the roof, throwing limbs off of the roof. And we're in this gravel alley, and I'm dragging the limbs over to the chipper. And when I came back for another limb, it was Daryl on the ground, and he had come off, couldn't get his arms in front of him, and he broke his neck. So Daryl ends up in the hospital. I visit him at the VA hospital. He says, look, I've got a month's worth of work sold. If you'll go look at the jobs, call all the customers, just do the ones you can do, and I'll give you 20% of it. I need the money, and I needed the money too. So I suddenly am in the tree business. I'm doing it. I'm the manager, man. Ted, my brother at the time, had been traveling all over the country, and he shows up in Topeka to help me out because he's out of work. And Ted and I start a company called TNT Tree Service. He talks me into coming to Springfield, Missouri, because he had been traveling all over the country, and he's like, out of all the places I've been, this is where I want to live. So let's do it there. And they got a lot of trees. So I followed Ted to Springfield, and we started TNT Tree Service in 1983. You know, the first 4 years, I knew nothing about tree work, but I didn't know anything until we went to a conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's funny, we went back to that conference 30 years later. It was in Charlotte again for the Tree Care Industry Association. That conference in 1988 was the thing that turned us around. It made me realize that I don't know what I'm doing. I need to become a certified arborist. I need to do things differently. We started wearing hard hats. We started pruning trees properly. We came back, called ourselves the professional. Both of us went for our arborist certification, and at that point, our lives kind of changed when it came to tree work. We knew how to get an edge on the competition and do the right thing by the trees. We were always pretty good at, those basic business philosophies. Do what you say you're going to do, show up on time, say please and thank you, and just, run a reputable business that people will refer you. You do those things, and the next thing you know, they're telling their friends, and you've got a backlog of work. From 1983 to 95, my brother and I worked together. We spent 12 years together. And Ted and I parted ways at that time. I bought him out, and then I felt like it was time for me to grow. And at that time, growth meant going some different directions, meaning we started landscaping and tree care, plant health care, and we were actually looking at lawn care, and we were just looking at ways to create more revenue and growth for growth's sake, and it wasn't a healthy recipe for our business. When I met Larry Ryan in 2002, he talked me into dropping the landscape department and signing an agreement with him to be his branch manager. And so I signed that agreement, and TNT became Ryan Lawn and Tree in 2003. And I stayed there for 10 years, and it was a great lesson. Larry was a mentor to me, and it was a great lesson in business that I needed on how to run a company by the income statement, and just me understanding that knowing your numbers is important. So Larry did that for me, and then when my agreement was up, I like to put it this way, they said, you can stay and we'll cut your pay, or you can go back out on your own. We'll release you from your non-compete. So Cherokee Tree Care was born again. So I just started over, and Cindy thought I was crazy, but and thinking back now, it was kind of a brave move, but then again, not so much when you think of 30 plus years of experience in the same city, and everybody knew me as the tree guy. So it was pretty easy to go back on my own and get a client following again. under a new name. Tree care is unique in a sense that it's one of the 4 most dangerous jobs in America from year to year. Some years it's the most dangerous job in America, meaning more people die on the job doing tree work than hardly any other profession. And then understanding the tree and what makes it function, what makes it work, where to make the cuts, understanding that a red maple is a lot different than a pin oak when it comes to pruning and what its needs are. So, just dealing with the different structures that we have, knowing that the tulip tree is so much weaker than the white oak, and you just can't tie in the same place on the tulip trees you can the white oak. So, trees are unique. They're huge, beautiful, majestic. There's so many things about them that are cool. I think that's what makes you love them. But then again, it also, I think, separates us from the lawn care companies and those other people that want to work on trees. Becoming a certified arborist is a task. It takes you 3 years in the industry before they'll even let you take the test. And then that test requires, after you become the certified arborist, you have to do continuing education units. So you're constantly having to keep your knowledge base up to date, and it's always changing. We're always learning something new about trees. So whether it's the new insects that are out there that we're fighting against, or new techniques on pruning, or I can remember in the 80s we threw our pruning paint away. You're not supposed to paint the wounds with pruning paint, and now we've got a product that we've learned works well, but it's not really a paint. It's orange oil and beeswax. So that's just one example of how it's always changing. I really hesitate to call myself the expert because that implies that I know everything about trees, and I feel like I just know like 1/100th of what there is to know about trees. Part of being in business for yourself, a lot of times you'll have the property that you do business out of and you live on that property, and we did that for a while, and it was like family, the crews coming in and going out every day, and the 2 young daughters, Kaylin and Janelle, just always being involved and knowing what's going on with the team. And in those days, we didn't have cell phones. We had a pager that you could get a hold of me in, and that if you wanted to get me, you had to page me, and then I would go to the radio in the truck, and there was a base station in the office, and you could sometimes hear the daughters coming over the radio in there where they weren't supposed to be, talking on the radio and calling for you, or calling for one of the crews. Or I think Janelle actually fired one of the employees on the radio one time when she was about 4. So those are good memories. What's that say? We don't see the world as it is when we see the world as we are. And all those years working with trees has made me realize that it takes a lifetime to grow a tree. And now the daughters are grown, I've got grandkids. How did I get here so fast? And when I work on a 60-year-old tree, that's kind of me in this lifetime. We put together a slogan called Tree Preservation for the Next Generation, and that really has to do with me doing tree work for so long, constantly trying to convince the customers that we plant trees for the next generation. The big ones that are in your yard, somebody else planted that, and you're just enjoying it, and this is the way we pass it on. You pay it forward by planting another tree. And if you hire a competent company that understands what they're doing, not just in the planting process, understanding not to plant it too deep, understanding what type of tree should be planted in what location, then the whole pruning process through the tree's lifetime, if you'll get the right guy on your property, that tree could be there for the next generation. Just came from Savannah, Georgia. Awesome trees. That was on my bucket list to climb those trees with the Spanish moss in them, and then resurrection ivy that grows on top of them. I'd like to know where that name comes from. But those big old majestic trees, the next generation of tree climbers need something to climb, and hopefully it'll be my grandsons. At least a couple of them. I've got 6. There's a couple of them that need to learn to love tree climbing, if I have something to say about it.